a recorded presentation so we can share with others later who weren't able to make it today. And hopefully this will be a really informative, and for those of you who've tuned in to listen to the presenters, you'll get an opportunity at the end to ask your specific questions. So see this as a great career hour, and prepare questions as we go along. And we intend to leave a lot of time at the end for your questions. So just save those up. Okay, so this is recorded, and we have 4 excellent UMB connected professionals with us today, and it looks like about 4 students. We could break off into breakout rooms one-on-one and do this. But so students that are here, please take advantage of this opportunity to hear from these 4 about their very different paths to the global career that they now encumber. And a word about global engagement. In this context, we consider global engagement to literally be anywhere in the world. I think we sometimes get confused with global versus local, but somebody's local is somebody else's global and vice versa. So you'll notice we have 2 professionals, recent graduates, who have gone into a bit of a global sphere, but more locally in this part of the world, whereas Valley and Cassidy will tell you a little bit about, I think, the global things they've done outside the country as well. So just to get started, my name is Bonnie Bissonette, and I am the Senior Director of International Partnerships. It's a title change, not a job change. International Partnerships for UMB. And it gives me great pleasure on behalf of the Center for Global Engagement to welcome our 4 guests today. I will just begin by introducing them very, very briefly. Amy Greensfelder is a recent 2017 UMB graduate of the School of Social Work and is now the director of pro bono counseling in Baltimore, which is a tremendous organization that I encourage you all to check out, providing mental health services for people who may not have other resources. Brandy Hobbs, you sent me your information, and I'm going to be like embarrassed because Brandy, if you could just unmute and introduce yourself, because I've misplaced it.
Sure, that's no problem. I'm a recent graduate of the Molecular Microbiology and Immunology PhD program at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. I defended in August of last year, and my official graduation date was December. But now I am a professor at one of the Pennsylvania System of Higher Education state schools, Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania, and I teach microbiology and molecular biology here.
Isn't that that's really fantastic? And congratulations. I mean, graduating in December and boom, into a job.
I defended August 2nd, and as soon as I was done, I started prepping for the semester, which started at the end of August. So wow. Yeah, it was go, but so worth
Edinburgh? Did you say Edinburgh?
Yeah.
My brother graduated from Edinburgh.
This is my hometown too, and my alma mater. So I'm so proud to be here. Oh, it's such a small world.
Gosh. Okay.
See, and you know what? I feel like this is the typical global engagement kind of occurrence. I mean, this happens like no matter where in the world you are, these things happen. I think it's amazing. Valley Meeks, Dr. Meeks is in the School of Dentistry and has done all sorts of amazing work in human resources for health in Rwanda. I know for one, but you've done many other amazing things, and I'm sure you will tell us about them. Dr. Cassidy Clausen is also faculty at the University of Maryland School of Medicine and is currently in Zambia, and he'll tell you a bit more about his role there, which facilitates global engagement for others as well. So with that, let's sort of go a bit in that order, if we wouldn't mind. And I'll have, and Lauren Taylor is our techno genius up in the corner. If you have any questions, put them in the chat for Lauren, and she will be able to help you figure that out. So thank you, everybody. And Amy, let's turn this over to you. Today's session is called Global Engagement, Launching Your Global Career. So I've asked the presenters to each talk a little bit, very briefly, about their path to their global career and talk about how they got from where you are now as students to where they are now, and perhaps Then after, we'll ask a few questions of them, and we'll leave plenty of time at the end for questions. So, Amy.
Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you for inviting me to participate. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amy Greensfelder. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a social worker, and I'm the executive director at the Pro Bono Counseling Project. I just wanted to share a bit about my career path. I was always interested in travel, and I was introduced to the field of refugee resettlement when I was in high school, when through church and Girl Scouts, I got involved with assisting an Afghan refugee family in resettling to the United States. My family lived in Tampa, Florida at that time, and it was right after 2001. And so there was a large number of Afghans resettling in the United States at that point. And I think it's always interesting, Bonnie, I'm sure you know this from your career, how these things kind of come around, you know, where things that are happening 20, 30 years ago seem to pop back up in the news cycle again. And it was through that initial work that that volunteer work that when I was a student in high school that I became aware of the struggles that this family had faced both overseas and then in the resettlement process in the United States. When I went on to college, I studied English and theology and philosophy. At that point in my career, I thought that I was interested in pursuing a career in ministry and becoming a pastor, but there's a thing about studying theology that it's not uncommon that people discover that they might be agnostic or even atheist through those kinds of studies, and that's what happened to me. And so I realized I needed to identify a new career path. And in the town that I went to college, there was a large Hmong refugee population, and I started to do some volunteer work in that community around community organizing and English as a second language and tutoring. And while I was kind of thinking about what I might want to pursue for a career instead, a mentor suggested, you know, you keep everywhere you go, you keep getting involved with this refugee resettlement. Have you thought of that as a career? And I was just, in my mind at that point in my life, I was just kind of like, this is just volunteer stuff that I do because I'm interested in it. It's not like something you could make a job out of, but it really got the wheels turning, and I was able to pursue some internships in that field. And after college, secured a job at a refugee resettlement agency doing immigration legal services. And I did that for a number of years, and then an opportunity came up to do overseas processing of refugees, so based in Nairobi, Kenya, interviewing refugees who were seeking to come to the United States as refugees and finding out why they had left their home countries and why they couldn't return, and preparing case files for adjudication by US government officials. So it's based in Nairobi, but had the opportunity to travel throughout Eastern and Southern Africa to refugee camp locations and urban locations to interview refugees for that processing. I did that for a year and then returned to the US to work domestically again in refugee resettlement, this time with the state of Maryland, coordinating the refugee mental health program that was brand new at that point. And in the work that I'd been doing in immigration legal services and overseas, I'd kept seeing this mental health thread appear again and again as part of the legal processes on both sides for folks here in the US and overseas. There's often a part of the process where you're asking people about why they'd left their home country, why they couldn't return, why they were separated from their children if you were trying to reunite a family. And that, of course, brought up all kinds of traumatic experiences. And in the roles that I'd been in, really what I could do was fill out some paperwork and say, at some point, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you know, you might get some, you know, relief for this separation that you're having or some resettlement in another country. But it all felt like there's something more in this mental health world beyond just filling out this paperwork to assist people. So through the work with the state of Maryland, we were able to do screening for refugees around depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, training of interpreters for working in mental health settings, and training for providers who were interested in working with the refugee population. And while I was doing that work, it was when I started my Master's of Social Work at UMB, got connected to Bonnie, had the opportunity to do some, do a interprofessional trip overseas with Valley's program of the Human Resources for Health in Rwanda with a nursing professor and a dental student. And I am a firm believer that I really solidified my understanding of my profession as a social worker through this work with these people with these colleagues from these other professional backgrounds. It really helped just me get a firmer understanding of what the professional ethos of social workers is vis-a-vis these other professionals. So that was a really, if you have opportunities to do the global experiences through Bonnie's office, I'd highly recommend it. And after finishing my master's of social work, I ended up in the job that I'm in now. At the Pro Bono Counseling Project, we provide free mental health services to anyone in Maryland who's unable to afford counseling. We connect to licensed mental health providers who volunteer their time. We have some staff who are bilingual. We have volunteers who are bilingual. We are able to provide translated materials. We provide interpretation. And we've been doing training with our providers on cross-cultural work and working with interpreters. So I was able to use the lessons learned through the refugee resettlement now that I'm working at a broader organization that serves anyone in Maryland, using those lessons learned to make sure that everyone in Maryland is getting the services that they need and deserve. So did I keep that to 5 minutes, Bonnie?
That was great. Thank you so much.
It was 10 before. I thought I had 10 minutes, so I tried to.
I did. I cut down. I said, I just want to leave a lot of time for the questions. And that is such an interesting story. And I know there's going to be this thread that will come through each of your pathways. And I'm looking forward to the sort of the things that you now notice, looking back on where you may have made a turn, or how do you get started and how does it become global? So we'll come back with questions, but thank you, Amy. That was great. Brandy, please share your story.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me here to share my story with the students. So it started a little convoluted, I suppose. I used to compete in sports at an elite level, and this took me all over the world. Gave me exposure to what life is like outside of my tiny little corner in the United States. And it really made me realize how good we have it here.
Okay,
So,
Brandy.
Yeah.
You know we're going to ask. So what sport do you have to say?
Okay, I was on the national team for Olympic shotgun shooting. So those little orange clay targets. Yeah,
Wow.
I was pretty good at that. It was pretty good.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Congratulations and wow.
It's in the past, but it started my whole journey. So it's an important part of my journey. It gave me exposure to life outside our tiny corner here in the United States. And for example, I didn't know this at the time, but many places in the world don't have access to a safe source of drinking water. This didn't occur to me when I was that age. So really began to recognize my own privilege in many ways during my travels. And at that same time, I was really enjoying my microbiology and immunology courses during my undergrad. And I was particularly fascinated by vaccine development and how we can train our immune systems to fight off disease. So after graduating with my bachelor's degree, I spent some time with one of my professors here. That's another thing, is maintain good relationships with your professors because it's worth it. I spent time with one of my professors from my undergrad in South Africa and Botswana. I went there with her and we worked on mainly conservation work. But while I was there, some of the things that I was exposed to, like people living in shanty towns where one water spigot was to serve 1,000 people. This was really eye-opening for me and solidified for me that I wanted to study global health and vaccine development. I wanted to take something I was interested in, so microbes and vaccine development, and do something with it to help others or to enable others. So I identified UMB and the Center for Vaccine Development and Global Health as my dream program for graduate school. And for some reason, they let me in. I'm so thankful for that. But coming there was one of the best decisions I really ever made. And I got to walk the hallways with and work alongside some of the most brilliant minds in the field of vaccine development, which was just so cool to me. And every single day I got to bump elbows with them, with my scientific heroes. At one point, I even got to Zoom with Tony Fauci last year, and I was totally fangirling. It was amazing. No shame. So when I became a student at UMB, I identified the Center for Global Engagement, which is run by Bonnie, as something that I wanted.
Not. I have to say, it's Virginia Rowthorn, who is the AVP for Global Engagement. She runs the center, but
when I first came here, first came 7 years ago, I suppose it was you who I spoke with about.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Yes. So I knew that this was something I wanted to get involved with. And my dissertation project in the lab, it involved vaccine development against a pathogen of global concern. But I also wanted to incorporate some sort of global studies into my graduate school portfolio. And so I wrote an application to be a part of one of their global research trips through the Center for Global Engagement. And I was awarded a global grant to travel to the Gambia in West Africa with doctors Melissa McDermott and Joanna Gatens. And we were supposed to be working with the Gambian Ministry of Health to establish basic occupational health protocols to protect health workers from on-the-job exposures like needle sticks, TB, hepatitis, and so forth. But then COVID hit, and so obviously we couldn't travel to the Gambia. But that pandemic wouldn't stop Doctors McDermott or Gatens, because they found a way to work with their Gambian colleagues and send aid in any capacity that they could. And they were kind enough to invite me to collaborate with them so that I could still gain this experience working with the Gambian Ministry of Health, even though we weren't able to travel due to the pandemic. So the first step was helping them just to get working internet, something that we take for granted, but this was huge for them. And then we were able to start having Zoom calls with them and emailing back and forth. And we had Zoom meetings once every month, and they communicated to us where they were at in terms of having new safety protocols approved by their Minister of Health and helping to get those protocols in place. And these were protocols that Doctors McDermott and Gatens actually helped to establish. So instead of working on occupational health and related to like TB and hepatitis and stuff, they pivoted at the drop of a dime. So always be flexible and adaptable. And instead, they worked on COVID-related occupational health concerns with the Gambian Ministry of Health. And this was a really formative experience for me. I learned a lot. And then through my time in grad school, I tried to get as much experience doing other things that I possibly could. I knew I really enjoyed research and I loved working in the lab, but I wasn't sure that that was something I wanted to do all the time. And maybe I wanted something else out of my career too. So I took any opportunity to gain any other experience I could. I taught some medical student microbiology labs. I did some STEM outreach programs in Baltimore. And I also had the support of my mentor to participate in a year-long fellowship, teaching fellowship. And I knew before I was interested in teaching, but this teaching fellowship really solidified that for me. So then it came time for me to defend my dissertation last August and move on to what came next. And I was very fortunate to have been offered this job teaching here at Edinburgh University. And here, my main job, excuse me, my main job is to teach. I teach molecular biology and I also teach microbiology. But I also get to do any kind of research that I'm interested in and introduce undergraduates to a research setting, which I really love doing. It's truly the best of both worlds for me, getting to do whatever research I want and then getting to teach. And what I'm most excited about is that I get to take students of my own to Africa. I'm actually currently awaiting approval from my dean to take students on a trip to Botswana and help them gain more global experience. And this first trip is going to be more conservation oriented, but subsequent trips after that will be more global health focused. And I too want and need to learn more about global health. So it'll be really exciting for both my students and myself to dig further into this. But I get to design these trips in any way that I want and teach them whatever. And the freedom to do that's really exciting. So I'm really hoping to be able to get my students excited about global work, because I believe at the end of the day, we're all humans. So let's work together to improve the human experience, right? So in a way, I guess my global interests helped get me to UMB. And then what I learned at UMB helped get me a job where I can continue engaging further in global work. So I can attribute that to my time at UMB though.
I love that. Thank you, Brandy. And you know, it's so cool that you're paying it forward literally as you've just completed your PhD. I think that's wow. And if there's anything, you got to keep us posted on how you're moving along, and maybe there's some things we can do together.
Exactly. Perfect.
Thanks. Dr. Meeks.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Bonnie, for all those accolades. But I feel like the old person here in amongst the group because I came to, I graduated from the School of Dentistry here at the University of Maryland in 1988 and returned in 1989 to help start a clinic, a dental clinic for treating people living with HIV disease, and it's called the Plus Clinic. So in the very beginning, when I first came back here in 1989, I worked on getting my master's in oral pathology because at that time there were a lot of things involved with oral lesions associated with people living with HIV disease. So in working with the Plus Clinic, I worked on getting my master's in oral pathology. But at that time, while I was doing that, and that was in the late 80s, early 90s, I assisted in a research project that was studying periodontal disease in Nigerian children. It's called NOMA. It's a disease that's frequently seen in children. It starts as inflammation of the gingiva, and it does progress to destroying the teeth, tissue, and bone. And they do lose teeth. In fact, sometimes you'll see a picture of the child with the mouth eaten away and face eating away. So I went with the group there, and I was kind of like the scut monkey. You know, I kind of gathered the children together, kept them, you know, quiet, looked out and things like that. But with that, I did not realize that that experience was a global experience. I just looked at it as, wow, this is a chance that I get to see. I get to go outside of the country and see something in Africa, the mother country, because I always wanted to go to the mother country. But as I said, working with HIV disease and starting it back in 1989, back then there were a lot of conferences that were international in dealing with oral health and people living with HIV disease, because it was very new and because there were lesions associated, what we called oral manifestations of HIV disease. So I was able to go on a lot of international conferences where we did poster presentations related to our dental clinic and the patients that we saw in the dental clinic. We're called the Plus Clinic. And it was mainly to promote critical oral health services for people living with HIV disease. So during that, just traveling and talking to other dental providers about HIV disease, I still didn't realize that what I was doing was something global, even though we went to London, we went to Hong Kong and Bangkok and a lot of places. Brazil, I went to Brazil a number of times, but I still didn't realize what I was doing was global. And then eventually, I was asked by my department chair if I wanted to go to Rwanda, because then, as Amy mentioned, Rwanda was starting this Human Resources for Health project. I was with the Minister of Health and the Minister of Education, and they were partnering with about, I think it was 20 colleges and universities from the United States to improve and enhance their healthcare system. So my department chair asked me on a Wednesday if I wanted to go to Rwanda, and I was like, I don't know. And he said, well, you leave on Saturday. And I'm like, oh, wow. And he said, well, if you don't want to go, we'll just ask. I'm like, oh, no, I will go. Okay, I will go. I am not going to pass up a trip. And it really was a very eye-opening experience. And that's when I realized what I was doing was global education. And while in Rwanda, the dental school, we were one of two dental schools ourselves and Harvard School of Dental Medicine to help the University of Rwanda establish their standalone dental school. And we helped to develop a curriculum and really mentored with them. But I really learned a lot. I learned that as when you go to a country, and I'm sure Amy and Brandy might have these same thoughts, when you go to a country and you go there like, oh, we're gonna do all this, and you don't bring those stakeholders to the table, you're gonna get, they will just shut you out. And that's what I learned and really saw that. And I was glad that we had a great group of people that we worked with. And I learned as much from them in developing their curriculum as they learned from us in developing their school curriculum. And just to give you an example, something here to stabilize a fractured jaw is not something that we would teach a beginning dental student. But in Rwanda, it is something because there are not many dental clinics. So somebody working out in the field or out in the rural areas might have to fixate a broken jaw. So those are things that I learned, that everything we learned here, you might have to change there. So it was indeed a good experience. The project was a 7-year project, and it has ended, although they are looking into starting something up again. And our president of UMB has sent a letter back to they now have a secretariat of health. And we may be doing something again in Rwanda, specifically with the University of Rwanda. But I still kept my contacts there. And one of the contacts that I still keep today is with the Urukundu Learning Center, which is an orphanage, and initially started as an orphanage, but now is an elementary school started by Arlene Brown. And I've been taking a number of dental supplies to not only the dental school in Rwanda, but also to the Urukundu Learning Center, because she does have a dental clinic there that she provides dental services. And some of the dentists working in that clinic also graduated from the dental school that we helped to start. But one thing I will,
cool?
yeah,
That's the cool part, right?
But one thing I will say that I noticed in working with this Human Resources for Health and working with Harvard, there are challenges that you will see when you're working with a state institution versus a private institution.
Yeah.
Private institutions can get things moving a little bit faster than, state institutions. We have a lot of,
hurdles.
Yes, most definitely.
Well, it's interesting because you were doing the clinic for the dental clinic for HIV. You set that up, and that was sort of the springboard to more of your global engagement. And I think that that's what I'm hearing. And I love that Brandy is already passing along information to students and future professionals. And that's what you're doing as well. And Amy, what you're doing, providing services and leading that effort with an understanding of who your clientele are, I'm so impressed with all of you. I really, really am, and that you're all paying it forward. So Cassidy, no pressure, but what are you doing? And tell us your story.
Hi everyone, and good evening from Zambia, where I'm dialing in from. So yeah, first of all, it's a great privilege to be here with all of you, and thank you, Bonnie and Virginia, for inviting me today. And yeah, a privilege to be with all these impressive people. So I'll briefly share my story. Let's see. So a little bit of a different background. I actually grew up in West Africa. My parents worked in agriculture research. They're Kansas farmers who took their skills to Cameroon and Nigeria for about 30 years. And so growing up, I was kind of acutely aware of some of the differences between the friends I had there and my family back in the US. And towards the end of my schooling in high school, I kind of was interested in becoming a physician and working in Africa in some setting, but it was very idealistic at that time and kind of a vague idea of what that would look like. I came to the States for college and went through pre-med studies. And then towards my junior year, actually I became aware of a remarkable opportunity through Chris Plow at the Center for Vaccine Development, University of Maryland, to work with him in malaria research in the country of Mali. And to me, it was just an astounding opportunity, and kind of couldn't believe that I wouldn't be paying for it, that they were going to, pay my way. I applied and was fortunate to get in. I'd never really heard of Maryland before or this guy or anything. And then I came to find out kind of the legendary status of the CVD at the University of Maryland. It really exposed me to the field of infectious disease as research and also public health. We were working on malaria vaccine development, which has that vaccine has since gone on to be developed and be rolled out. and exposed me to a group of wonderful professionals, including Kirsten Leike, and then later on Miriam Laufer, who I'm standing in for today. And this was part of my connection to the University of Maryland and inspired me. So at that point already I was interested in working in medicine in Africa, but like I said before, it was a very kind of, nascent idea. And that experience helped me understand how I could contribute in a very meaningful way and what the tools were that I could use to contribute, and kind of what the role of an expat doctor can be, an American doctor, because there's a lot of cultural and resource issues to navigate carefully. So following that, I applied to medical school and was fortunate enough to be accepted at University of Maryland. So I'm also a graduate from Maryland, and spoke about on my interview day, spoke about some of my experiences with Maryland faculty, and went through medical school at Maryland, which was a great experience. And I was able to garner some international experience working in HIV. Actually, before medical school, I should say briefly that I spent a year volunteering in an HIV clinic in South Africa. And that helped to expose me a lot to what on the ground implementation and real world HIV medicine looked like. And that was right before PEPFAR, so right before the days of ART treatment for people with HIV in Africa. So it was a critical time and really helped inform my worldview around global health and so forth. So medical school at Maryland, I was fortunate to connect with some of the IHV faculty there and spent some time doing overseas research with them. I also took a year off and did a master's of public health across town at Hopkins, which also helped broaden my skill set and my worldview. Following graduation from Maryland, I went to Yale for internal medicine residency and also engaged with some of their global health education efforts there. And then I was looking at infectious disease as a fellowship because that's a pretty classic pathway into global health. It's not the only one these days. I think 30 years ago it may have been, but fortunately today you can choose any route you're interested in, I think as evidenced by the wonderful colleagues here, and find a thriving career in global health. But that's where my passion was, particularly around marginalized groups and the diseases that infect them. And so looking around, I looked at some of the best programs in the country and really decided that Maryland was the one doing the stuff that I wanted to do, and was fortunate to come back to Maryland and do fellowship there with a number of international experiences again at that time, and then was fortunate to join as faculty in 2015. And so since 2015, I've been posted overseas in Zambia, in Lusaka. We have 3 faculty here, Dr. Lottie Hachambwa, Dr. Rob Schoenberger, our country director, and myself. And I joined in 2015 as a technical director for a care and treatment program funded by the CDC to stop mother-to-child transmission of HIV, and helped out in that project for a number of years. And then as of 2018, started having my own grants as principal investigator, and since then I run several CDC and NIH grants as an investigator here, and we do a lot of work around community-based models of health. So as you all know, there aren't enough doctors to go around, there aren't enough nurses to go around, and so we do a lot of task shifting into the community with community health workers who bring ARVs and other critical medical treatments into the community, to the population, so that people can get the treatment that they need. Our community health workers also do a lot with HIV testing, and kind of the area we've been reaching into in the last few years has been finding the most marginalized groups who are highly stigmatized in this part of the world. So, well, most of the world. Men who have sex with men, people who inject drugs, prisoners, female sex workers. And what's really cool about our approach is that we recruit peers from those communities and train them in community health. And then those peers go out and reach out to their fellow peer members to offer them HIV testing, bring them HIV medications, or pre-exposure prophylaxis to help prevent them from getting HIV in the first place. That's kind of the core focus of our work. But one of the great additions to my core focus has been an aspect of global health education. And from about 2016 onwards, I've been fortunate to partner with Bonnie and Virginia at the Center for Global Engagement via the grants for interprofessional global development, and then later on the President's Global Impact Fund to help bring trainees over here, and also Zambian trainees to Maryland for a reciprocal global health exchange. I think to date, we've had 62 trainees come to Zambia, which has been wonderful. We've had people from all of the professional domains, I think, nursing, pharmacy, medical students, residents, and fellows, etc. So it's been a wonderful exchange. Of course, it's all been on pause because of COVID. But one important aspect of that also has been bringing Zambian, we work with a Zambian medical education initiative here, and we bring Zambian students or trainees over to Baltimore for medical observerships at our hospital there as well. And that's been a great aspect of this. And so I think, yeah, I think that's a brief summary of my background, the work that we do here, and some of the global health education work that we're able to engage in with the support of Maryland. And just to say that Maryland's been a great place to develop a global health career. I will echo a few threads from my colleagues here. First of all, the private public aspect, I completely agree. You know, during my brief time at Yale, it was amazing how fast they could get stuff done. And also just, Yale was part of the HRH in Rwanda group as well, so I heard a lot about that at the time. Refugee, my wife is a refugee lawyer, and so that's been an aspect of her work as well. And then Botswana is our next door neighbor, and so we see a lot of stuff over there as well. So thanks all.
Wow. Well, thank you. And so you kept saying, I'm fortunate to, but I think the theme that I know from all four of you is that you guys, to a person, really work very, very hard to make the opportunities present themselves. And I think that's one of the things that I would add. I am not a global health professional, but I'm a Minnesotan who ended up in the Foreign Service, the diplomatic corps of the US government. And I spent 10 years in Africa as well. And the one piece of advice that I always give, and I know you would all agree, and this is where I'm going to kick off a question to each of the presenters to say, what would you say would be a really key one or two pieces of advice that either you were given as you were coming up on your journey, or that you would now share based on what you've learned? And I'm going to just share one from my perspective. Coming out of Minnesota, my parents and my family, I was a first-gen student, although we didn't call us that back in the day. And I had no idea about anything, but I had an opportunity and I chased it. And to me, I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. And I can remember saying, I want a career where I get to travel around the world and somebody else will pay for me to do it. And I said that when I was like a junior in high school. And somehow just that thought led me to, George Washington University for graduate school, and then the Foreign Service, where I got to spend, 15 years in other parts of the world, having kids who got to see the pyramids when they were 4 years old, that kind of thing. So my career was mostly because I wanted to see the world selfishly. I feel like the careers that you all have pursued and are now embodying align better with where I have found myself now, which is the heart of my career, which is providing opportunities for others to experience global engagement as part of their career development or as part of their professional portfolio. So Valley, Cassidy, it's been great to be able to work with you and support your work, which then supports the students as well. So that's where my passion is supporting students, especially students who think, I can't do this. The two things that people have, and this is my second recommendation. Number one, be attuned to opportunity. When it passes by you, it might not be on the road you've carved for yourself. It might be off here on the side, but there's a little voice that says, come to Mali and look at malaria. I mean, and who would know, right? Which of those things is going to grab you? And so be attuned to those things that aren't on your path, but could be. And then the second one is just to never, ever, ever burn a bridge. Because the thing that I've learned is the world is in fact very small. And the people that you may have disagreements with or arguments with, before you leave their presence, you need to fix that. You need to get back, and don't worry if you're the one saying I'm sorry and it's not really your fault. you need to get on good footing with everyone, because 10 years from now, you're going to walk into an office to apply for a job, and guess who's behind the desk? Oh, it's happened. Trust me, it's happened to me. So those are my two pieces of advice: is keep your eyes open for opportunities that aren't on your main path, but peripheral, because that could be your calling. And then secondly, never burn a bridge. So with those as my two tips, I'll go back to Amy and say, what would you say are one or two of the best pieces of advice you've got or that you give?
So very much in line with what you were saying about just being open to possibility and opportunity. I too am, sometimes I meet with students or other people who are looking for career advice, and sometimes people say, oh, in 10 years, I want to be in this position at this organization. And that's really great if that's, there are people in the world who do that and they check the boxes and they go along. But I think that for global opportunities, you really have to be open to all the different ways that they might present themselves, because it might not be, like you were saying, Bonnie, the way that you thought it was going to come about, or the place that you thought, or the thing you thought. But when the opportunity to go to Rwanda through your office came up, Bonnie, I got an email about it, and the application was due that day by like midnight or something, and I heard about it that morning, and so it was something I was interested, so I gathered the material. So the two things on my mind are like staying open to opportunity, and then the second part of that is having your passport ready, is what the note that I took listening to Valley's conversation or point about it being just a few days between an opportunity presenting herself and being able to travel, because some of the things that I've participated in have worked out like that. When I moved to Kenya for a year, I had not the few days that Valley was talking about, but it was 3 weeks notice to decide to accept a position and be on the plane. And so just sometimes these things happen really quickly, and just being ready to accept what comes your way.
That passport thing is a really important one. I don't know how many of you have ever seen the Yes Theory. Have you seen these guys? Check it out. It's a bunch of young guys who present opportunities to people randomly. Mostly it involves passports. They'll say, if we pay for everything, will you fly with us to Italy today? They're just trying to prove the things that can happen when you're open to that. So I think your one about passport is critical. Get your passports ready. They're good for 10 years. So just make sure.
And I mean it both literally and metaphorically, like
I know. But that, I think that's a legit one. We have had that happen. People have not had a passport, and then we were able to ask them, could you fill a spot? And they had to say no because their passports were expired. So, Brandy, what are your thoughts?
So going on some similar themes, I really didn't always know what I wanted to do. When I was in graduate student, probably up until a year ago, I didn't realize that being a professor at a liberal arts institution was something that I wanted to do. But what I did all along the way was I gained experience in other things. So find opportunities. And if, like we've said, if they present themselves to you, take them. Even if you think it's not going to be relevant to the role that you, in your mind, think you want to do, it could end up being very important for a different role that you take on later on in life. So gain any extra experience that you can. Volunteer somewhere, take a short course, anything that you can do to gain extra experience and find other opportunities. That's going to be really, really important. And then another thing would be always ask for help. For some of us, it might be a pride thing and not wanting to ask for help, but we all need help sometimes, so be willing to ask for it. And help can come in many forms. When I was working in the lab, there were some experiments that I really needed to do for my project, but our lab didn't have the capability of doing. So I made some connections, made some collaborations, and asked them for help to get done what we needed to get done. That's just one instance. I really struggled with core course as a PhD student. My first semester at UMB, core course was really, really tough. And so I had to realize I needed to ask for help. So I took on a tutor and she helped me out and I passed. And that tutor is now one of the best friends I've ever had. She's a bridesmaid in my wedding. So the point is, ask for help. Be willing to ask for help. We can all use help sometimes, and maintain those collaborations. So I've spoken before with Dr. Klassen, and I spoke before with Dr. Brothorn, and I've kept up with Bonnie, and try to maintain those connections over time. And maybe one day I'll work with them on a different project. You never know. So maintaining those collaborations is really important. So get other experience. ask for help, maintain collaborations and relationships. They're very important.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I know Dr. Meeks and Dr. Clausen are not going to be upset with me when I say it's 10 to 1. And what I'd like to do is open the floor for some Q&A. And during that time, if a question comes your way, perhaps you can toss in your nuggets of wisdom. So let's start and just say, if somebody's got a question, please just raise your hand. There you go, Michelle.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Excellent. Thank you so much. This is really such an inspiring webinar, and I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to hear everyone. And Amy, just so you know, I am in St. Petersburg, Florida at this very moment, so which is a nice little sister to Tampa from where you said you were from. So the weather is rainy and cold here. I don't know if that makes any difference for you. But my question is more for you, Bonnie, as far as I have a very diverse field or background with experience, and I'm wondering, how do I find out what global opportunities are available for me in my field of expertise and specialty? Is that something where I can send a CV to you, or what are the resources for me to find out what fits my unique field of experience?
That's a really good question, Michelle. Thank you for asking. And I think that's a great place to start, is my actual talent, which I discovered when I was 40, is that I'm a connector. And so I'm actually in a very good role for me, because I just love connecting people and opportunities and other people with other people. So yes, step one would be to send me your CV with a note. And put in your subject line, for anybody who's going to send me an email. I am terrible on email. I'm much better in person. So put request in capital letters right in the subject line, because then I'll see that and I'll know you're asking me to respond. So that's step one. The other thing would be, Michelle, where are you connected to UMB in some way? What is your connection to UMB?
So I am currently in the Master's Cannabis Science and Therapeutics program through the School of Pharmacy.
Great. I haven't met
yeah.
anybody in that program, and I'm so delighted to meet you. That's very prestigious, hard to get in. Good
Yeah,
for you.
they've done an amazing job with the curriculum.
Yeah.
I myself am a professor at a chiropractic university and a chiropractor by trade with a specialty in internal medicine. So yeah, and public health and environmental health and all that stuff. You know, I'm on my 5th career, I think.
Yeah, that's what we all try to do, keep relevant and interested. I think that's wonderful. And I will put, Lauren, could you put my email in the chat, please? I can't do 2 things at once. But Michelle, send me your CV in an email. And what I'll do then is we can establish a connection, and we can do a quick 30-minute Zoom call, just talk about what you're thinking about. And then I do intros to people. So that's one of the services we provide, because as a center, we're a relatively small shop. There's only 4 of us on the outbound side, and I just talk to people and try to connect them with others who either have experience or interest in the same sorts of things, just building networks. I think that's how global works, is by building the networks of people that you engage with and speak to. So but I'd be happy. I do one-on-one consultations with students all the time with varying degrees of success. No guarantees, but it's free.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and also we have a global newsletter that I urge all of you, if you're not already signed up, to receive it. All the global opportunity, not all, many of the global opportunities and connections about stories of people at UMB doing global things will be in that newsletter. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's umaryland.edu/global, and you can go there and find the newsletter. So is there anybody else that has a question? Don't be shy. This is an opportunity. Cassidy's with us from Zambia, which is super cool. I just want to say, can I come to Zambia? I think that sounds like a really terrific opportunity for students.
I've been inviting you for years, Bonnie.
I know. I think this might be the year, actually, because UMB is looking for clinical placement sites always for their different, health professions in particular. And for those of you that have gone through those programs, you know, getting clinical sites is a constant challenge, either because there are too few or because COVID necessitates, you know, fewer in each place. So we're exploring expanding clinical options to overseas locations. There's a lot, you want to talk about work, right? Getting all the regulations and rules and all of that set is tough, but Cassidy's up for the job, so I think we'll get there. No other questions. I want to just say this has been recorded, and in fact, a lot of students, we have realized, do watch the recordings of these presentations at a time that is more convenient. So I think what we'll probably do is, if each of the presenters, if you are willing to put your email into the chat, that would give those present an opportunity to reach out if they wish. And for the others of you, I would say reach out to the Center for Global Engagement after the fact. If you're reading this, you'd like to get in touch with any of the presenters, we can connect you, and feel free to follow up with them at any time. I know I can say with confidence that they are all very supportive of professional development for others. So thank you to all of our presenters this morning. We've got a few minutes left, but I think we can let everyone go early, unless, no, I think we'll go back. Valley and Cassidy, let's have you share your last tidbit. We'll give the final minute to you, Valley. Cassidy, you go first. What would you say is the one tip or thing you've heard or learned or you would share with others about how to get launching a global career?
Okay, go ahead.
Valley's going to go. No, you go ahead, Valley. That's fine.
Okay. I'm going to say, other than the being open to travel, something that you mentioned that I need to keep in my brain, and is not to burn those bridges, because I'm thinking there are some people that I've met in Rwanda that I've invited to the United States, and I've said, you're on my turf. I'm going to treat you the way you treated me when I was on your turf. But I'm not going to burn that bridge, Bonnie. I'm going to keep that in mind. So I'm going to remember that. Okay.
I love it. I love it. Cassidy, final thought for the day?
Okay, well, I'm going to slip in three. First one, follow your passion. There's always going to be opportunities and amazing things, and just, you know, seek your passion wherever it leads you. Second, you're on from now until the rest of your academic career, you're somewhere in the mentee-mentor relationship, and take advantage of that. Seek out good mentors now. And when you are, you know, after you hit that graduation mark, become a good mentor to those who follow after you. It's you're paying it forward. It's a rewarding process, and I think we all have incredible mentors in our past and still today who continue to. I have multiple mentors that I reach out to for advice, and it's a great privilege to serve as a mentor to others. And then finally, family. Your family back home needs to support a global health career. Your family with you needs to support a global health career. I'm very fortunate to have a spouse and who loves living here in Zambia. We have 3 young kids who love it as well. And without that, and without the support of our family back home, this life wouldn't be possible. So family is always important and core. And thanks for having us speak today.
That was terrific. Thank you. Great final word, family. So thank you, everybody. You're all part of the UMB family. It's been a delight. And we look forward to more global engagement with all of you in the future. Have a good day, everybody.